Hey guys, welcome back to the Falco. It's the morning after the Everton game. Obviously, another hugely disappointing result, a hugely disappointing performance. So just going to have a quick look back on it. I decided not to watch the game back. It's been that kind of week with the results we're having, the performances that we're putting out. But I think my observations at the time won't change very much if I were to look back on this game. So the only thing I will say is that the morning after, and having tried to stay away from social media and not be influenced by other people's opinions, is that we have to look at this in concrete terms, in terms of the really, really unlikely situation that Tottenham Hotspur find themselves in at the minute. So there are some mitigations that are genuine and are valid. We've obviously talked to death about the injury crisis at the club, but for that injury crisis to then continue to mount and take out three more of our starting first 11, and certainly one of our most influential and important players in Dominic Solanke being out now for a long-term injury, Brennan Johnson being missing, and Bissouma not being available for that midfield. We can certainly argue that maybe a couple of those players are not playing up to their potential, but we still would have liked to have had them available for this game. And it certainly wouldn't have led Ange to changing the system. So, it's very, very unlikely that a team would ever suffer this number of injuries. And finally, the injuries have also now fallen into the midfield, which is one area that actually we've had quite a lot of stability throughout the season, maybe only Bentancur being the one that's been missing. And we really are struggling. So there is a bit of mitigation. Ange and his team tried to change up the formation a little bit, change up the system a little bit, and it really didn't work. That first half was an example of how difficult it is at this level, at Premier League level, to implement something with almost no notice. So he's probably had one and a half training sessions to tactically embed a slightly different system, which looked like a player dropping into a back five, moving in and out of a back five. Anyway, that's what it appeared to be to me. And yeah, it absolutely didn't work. We could look at it from the point of view that a couple of those players that were implementing the system are very young. So it might not be something they've ever done before or ever been asked to do before. Obviously, players like Archie Gray playing out of position. And so they would look at that and they wouldn't necessarily know off the bat where to go, when to go, how to go, and do those bits and pieces, whereas maybe older, more experienced players would, because they would have played similar systems before or played more in similar systems. So that kind of thing. You can have these circular arguments and go back. Should the club have brought in more first team ready players? Arguably, yes. I think everybody would agree with that. Would we be in a better position? Yes, etc. But we just have to go on what we had available yesterday and what was done with it. And as I said, it really didn't work. So the players didn't really get to grips with the system. There was again talk about us being too passive. Yes, agreed, a little bit too passive. But again, some of the players are running on empty, and playing that new system, for me, it's not necessarily just the passive nature of it, which we were guilty of in midweek and guilty of again here. It's more, we can't get a foothold in games, and therefore we can't build any confidence, and therefore we can't build any momentum. So the way that things unfolded, we had the Dominic Calvert-Lewin goal, that first one, was a great example of, we had loads of players around. There really shouldn't have been a great deal of danger. Garner has a very simple, almost reverse pass. It's a nice little cute inside ball, but Calvert-Lewin shouldn't be receiving that ball that easily, and he certainly shouldn't have three players falling over themselves, as he's able to take several touches in the box before putting it inside the near post. So players were getting on top of each other, they were getting in each other's way, they were running the wrong lines. It absolutely didn't work, and from there on in, it continued to get worse. We were still conceding spaces, we were still conceding the areas that have been problematic to us in Ange's existing system, in and around the fullback areas, easy to counter-attack against. and because we were unable to hold onto the ball, progress the ball, play with any tempo, play with any rhythm, which for me is one of the biggest problems with the group of players that has been available, then it allowed Everton to come at us, and they scored another 2 good goals. They certainly could have had more across the 90 plus. That second goal, again, the 2, arguably, if you call them the centre backs that have ended up in there, Dragushin and Gray, who end up at the second post, too close together, slightly, sawtooth, and it's one of those where Dragushin, who's been battered and beaten and really knocked down, he had already struggled. He struggled defensively. He's played a lot of minutes without any respite, and he can't get his leg up fast enough to get that ball away. I don't really know whether he gets a touch, but if he does, he just kind of flicks it onto Archie Gray's shin, and Archie Gray's facing his goal. So that's a recipe for disaster. He's got to be kind of facing where the ball's coming from and slightly away. But again, this is no criticism, particularly of Archie playing positions that he's never trained to play in his life. So it didn't really work. And then again, Ange, who is a fantastic player, it looks like a real talent on the ball, really committed. He scored. He's got a very good individual goal, but again, Dragushin, he's not covered himself in glory. He gets his feet wrong early on in that move. You see Berryval kind of saying to Dragushin, we've got your inside cover, and you cover the outside. Dragushin starts to turn, he starts to move, and then Njai just throws one step over. Dragushin's forced to come back round, but then he's already he's that half step off it, which at that level, Njai is strong enough to hold off Dragushin's two-handed, kind of holding, and then a good finish into the roof of the net. So all of those things, the system was problematic. Players didn't know where to go and where to be. We were unable to progress the ball. We really, really struggled. And I've said this in analysis before the game, I really worry about the tempo we play at. I don't like the tempo we play at. I don't like the fact that we are, continuing to play into, I would say these are traps that are set by oppositions, and certainly Arsenal did it better than most, but I don't feel like they're traps. I feel like we are showing oppositions exactly where our weaknesses are, and then we're continuing to play into them without coming up with other ideas. So that for me is extremely problematic, and it's where I really do put the onus on the manager and the coaching team. Is, you could sit there and try to get out of this by doing the same things with players who are either unable to, unwilling to, or simply haven't yet learned how to do what you're asking them to do. But the simple fact is the results aren't following, and you have to, while also coaching and building your philosophy and getting players to understand, you've got to win football matches, and we are not winning any football matches with all the mitigations in place that we talk about a lot. So it's really disappointing. It was really disappointing first half. We were marginally better in the second, but not great. How many times have we said this? Really, really poor in the first half, marginally better in the second. And we've seen this performance as well, where we let a team get away to a really big lead. It happened last season as well. And then when they've kind of sat back and they're defending the game, we managed to go in and score a few goals that makes the scoreline look a bit more respectable. It wasn't a respectable performance. Everton could have had more goals, and despite me saying, the system didn't work, I wasn't mad at it. When I saw it, I thought, this has got a chance, this has got a chance in terms of a bit more defensive solidity, but we really didn't execute. And even then, if you've got what ostensibly goes from a 4 into a back 5, and then you've got a little bit more defensive cover in between, if you're just allowing a straight long ball over the top catch you out several times, then there's nothing you can do. You can argue about the high line, you can argue about where we play, but this is really basic stuff. If you are not set to play the high line, if the centre half, if Tarkowski, I think it is, has got the ball at his feet, with loads of time and space and there's no press on him, and you're still moving forward into the high line. This is basic stuff. You just can't do it. It's not about playing the philosophy at all costs. It's about playing the situation that you find in front of you and applying the philosophy to it. So in that situation where Tarkowski's got a really easy ball over the top and you've got a really strong player and a willing runner in Calvert-Lewin, you can't blindly walk up and say, well, I'm just doing what the system requires. No, you have to play that situation. And again, we didn't do that well. So we didn't cover ourselves in glory. If we want to look for positives, they're not a great deal, but we can put a little bit of praise on Ben Davies. He came in and, coming in completely cold, having been out with injury, I thought he did really, really well, relatively. And actually he looked really, really strong up against Calvert-Lewin, which, Calvert-Lewin has got the beating physically. He's got the beating of most centre-halves, and Ben Davies is a, left back converted to centre-half. I thought he did really well, so credit to him for that. Jed Spence, again, deserves a lot of credit for what he did in the game. But again, I come back to the fact that teams have figured out that we are unable to play out when we get into that deep area at the back. We move loads of players into that area. We play the ball out from the keeper to Jed Spence. And then we just don't have the options. We don't have the speed, we don't have the rotations, and we don't have the confidence to play through a press. And so teams are very, very happy for us to have the ball deep and then to really be energetic and come at us and press. This is no real criticism of Jed himself. It's just Arsenal did it really well to us. They as teams do, they'll open it up and they'll let the ball go to where they want it. And then there's a trigger, there's a player who goes, or there's a situation, players will go. Teams are doing it really well to us. We are not learning, we're not adapting, we're not moving the ball quick enough. And you could see that in this game, the classic, how well did Jed Spence do when he was in, a more advanced area and being that kind of dynamic, attacking, flying wing back, even though he's playing on the left and he is, he's a right wing back or a right back. He was fantastic and he was doing great things, and he's got energy and technique and drive and bite. Really, really good stuff. So he deserves a lot of credit for that. But we're really successful when we do it higher up the pitch. We're really not successful when he does it right down by the corner of our 18-yard box. Teams have, they've picked up on it. It's not difficult to see. Anybody can see it. And they are punishing us. They're putting us under pressure, and we are not showing that we've got what it takes to get out of there. We're not showing that we're working on what it takes to get out of there, and it's happening time and time again. Hugely frustrating for me. This is on the coaching staff, and it's, for me, it's just not good enough. Other things to kind of think about is there is definitely, there are sliding doors moments in games. The penalty, it's definitely a penalty. That's absolutely a foul, where Branthwaite hits Son in the box. He clatters into him. It's a bit clumsy and it is a bit soft, but you'll give that outside the box. So, when you're playing poorly, you don't get the rub of the green. And again, we didn't get the rub of the green. We really could have done with it there. But Sonny, confidence completely shot. He got himself into a couple of really good positions, good balls played through, played through long balls over the top through the centre halves. He gets himself into great positions. No issue with, all his legs have gone, he can't get there. He absolutely does. He roasts much younger defenders to get into those positions. And a couple of tame finishes. These are not the finishes that we expect from Son. He is an absolutely brilliant finisher when he gets in the box, let alone what he can do from outside the box. And his confidence has gone. Two very tame finishes. The first one kind of running through, plays it straight at Pickford, and the second one where we finally managed to work the ball down the right, and the ball's laid to him on the edge of the box. He even had time to take a touch, but he doesn't. He snatched at it a little bit, probably ankles it a little bit, and just tamely rolls it into Pickford. So again, these are the moments. I think one of them was maybe 0-0 and one was at 1-0 or whatever the timeline was of those. They're important moments, and they change the game, the psychology, the mentality. They change what we can do with a situation and how the opposition is feeling, because Everton, having had all of the game up until then, finding themselves 1 or 2-0 down, that is a team that is absolutely lacking confidence. And even though Goodison Park was rocking because of how well they were doing, that confidence is very fragile. So if you affect it, you can certainly affect the game and maybe go on to get a more positive result. It is what it is at the minute with Sonny. He's played too many minutes. His confidence isn't there. The team is not playing with any confidence, and this is the end result. You get poor output, and we need. The manager's been shouting for it. We've all been shouting for it for years. We need reinforcements. We need players to come in. Otherwise, our season is going to derail very, very quickly in that first week of February. Madison, again, it's really difficult with Madison because he shows the quality that he has, and Madison in a high functioning team with the quality that he has would be brilliant. But when our backs are against the wall, he is not demonstrating what you need from that senior player, from that leadership group, from a player of his caliber to actually grab the game by the scruff of the neck and do things. I think he slows the play down too often. When you see Madison on the pitch, how often are you seeing him with his arm out, like asking for an option or pointing and trying to move players around while he's on the ball? We can't do that. That is just allowing the opposition to get themselves set and get into good positions. We need to move the ball with far more pace to move players about instead of receiving, taking loads of touches, slowing it all down, turning around. Some of the touches are very neat and tidy and very nice, but oppositions are finding it super easy to play against us at the minute. And Madison's got to find solutions. He's got to speed up his play, which means having the ball at his feet much less and just keep it ticking and really up the tempo until the opposition players have been moved about to the point where he can receive the ball, and now he's got a bit more time to do what he wants to do with it. I don't feel he's doing that at the minute. There's not a great deal else to say. It was a really, really poor day at the office. The 2 goals that we scored, Mikey Moore deserves a bit of credit. He did really well when he came on because he was positive, got the ball and started going at players on that left hand side. I think a lot of us would have liked to see a bit more of Mikey. I was getting so frustrated in the first half. I think Pap Sarr's dip continues, and honestly at kind of 25-30 minutes I would have made a change. I would have brought off Pap Sarr and changed it because I didn't think the system was working, and I also think that Pap is going through that period where, and this happens to him a lot, when he's not on it and he's not confident, he gives away possession. He doesn't hold on to possession, and he got caught so easily. I think he gave the ball away, was it for the Calvert-Lewin goal? He gives the ball away with a flick to nothing over his shoulder, and then just a ball coming across him, an easy step over by the Everton player, lets the ball go to the next man along, which is Garner, I think, and plays it in. I think that's the right goal. But yeah, this is really basic stuff, and he's getting a bit lost. He's doing too much running. He's getting a bit lost. I don't think he really knows where he wants to be, and because the team isn't confident and playing well, that's showing in his game as well, and he has it in his game where he does concede possession a bit too easily sometimes. So we're really not in a good place at the minute. Lots of games, in theory this should have been the first game of a kind of 5-game run where we probably would aim for victories in most of them and at worst draws. Not looking that way. We're really struggling. The club hasn't backed the manager by bringing him any players, and we're really deep. It looks like we might do some deals at the end of the transfer window, but you would argue that the savings we make have been wiped out by the by the defeats we've suffered and the games that we've lost and the points that we've given up. So we'll see. Do they stick with the manager? This is another topic. I see Terzic, I see Allegri popping up, and I've got lots of thoughts. I've got more thoughts on Allegri because I've seen more of his football than I've seen of Terzic's, and I'm not convinced by either. But at a certain point, you do feel like any other manager, Sean Dyche, David Moyes, Terzic, Harry Redknapp, Christian Gross, would come in, put in a very basic 4-4-2 or a version thereof, and probably set Tottenham up to be a bit harder to beat and a bit harder to score against, and might get a few more results. At the minute, things aren't working. Whether the club stick with the manager, I have no idea. I wouldn't sack Ange. I would stay with him. I'd back him. Because what is going to happen anyway is whether you keep him or you sack him, players are going to come back. And if you sacked him and a new manager comes in, they're going to be the beneficiary of our first team players coming back in, our defenders, and more players are going to come back. And yes, there will be an uptick in results, and everyone will go, you see, this is what, if you'd have changed it ages ago, would be better. But actually, I don't think that's the case. So my feeling is back Ange, give him the players he wants, buy players who can also be used by the next guy. And I think things will uptick. All we really care about now, because the league is an absolute state, is the cups. Desperately cling on, get through that Liverpool game if we can, get to a final, see what we can do, get out of the season maybe with a Carabao Cup, and then let's reevaluate in the summer. And if you've had to spend more money in January, well, these are, paying for the sins of the past. You didn't invest in the team, Tottenham Hotspur, Daniel Levy, ENIC, whoever you want to put it on, in the past. And so we've had so much work to do, having brought in Ange, that you're going to have to spend more money than you wanted to spend. Whatever your budget is and whatever your financial jurisprudence on what we can spend and when, we're spending more because all these years you've done it wrong and you've not done it well enough, in my opinion anyway. So, not great feeling going into the week. We've got a little bit longer before the game because it's a Thursday night game in midweek. Nothing but a win will do in this game. We've got to go there. We've got to get that result. And keep our hopes alive, stay in Europe a bit longer. Anyway, not a very positive video, but things aren't very positive at the minute. So let's see what we can do. I'll be really interested to see what happens during the next couple of days. Anyway, have a good week, everyone, and come on, Tottenham.